Hello, I'm Lisa Braginton, one of the plant doctors here at Moana Nursery, and today let's talk about what to do in the garden in winter. Our autumn days, beautiful as they may be, are becoming shorter, cooler, and a lot grayer. As the golden leaves drop, we have to think about what's appropriate to be doing in the garden now. One of the most important considerations is winterizing your irrigation system. Winterizing your irrigation system. It takes 3 consecutive days in temperatures of about 25 to 27 degrees to create risk for your irrigation system. Up until that point, although we may experience frost, your irrigation system is not really at risk. It is a benefit to really know your irrigation system, as ambient predicted temperatures can vary greatly across the Truckee Meadows. Before you winterize your irrigation system, it's wise to adjust your watering according to the ambient temperatures. In other words, we don't want to go from our summer or even fall schedule of watering to just turning that irrigation system off. We want to make certain that our plants go into the winter months with their root zones thoroughly hydrated. So we want to make sure that we're doing a deep watering before those freezing temperatures occur and the soil starts to freeze. Be proactive in your irrigation needs. Not only do you want to make certain that your plants are well watered, but you don't want to get caught short with freezing temperatures and a system that hasn't been winterized. As you prepare to winterize your irrigation system, it's a great time to take another walk around in your landscape and evaluate your irrigation system. Make notes, possibly even chronicle it on your cell phone. It's an easy way to check where your emitters are and if they seem to be doing an adequate job throughout your landscape. You can also journal and make notes for irrigation repairs, and if time allows, it's a great time to make those adjustments now. As we all know, springtime can be very busy in our landscapes, and any little gains you can make during a fall into winter walk around on your irrigation system can pay off with great dividends in the spring. So be proactive in evaluating your irrigation and make certain you get that water down for all of your landscape plants prior to shutting off your system. This is also a great time to learn or understand how your irrigation system needs to be winterized, drained and protected for the winter freezing months, and also to learn how to bring it back online again should we have a particularly dry winter where turning on your irrigation system can make sense rather than running around with a bucket or a hose. In any case, be aware that most winters in our area require some winter watering, and this is especially important for newly planted trees and shrubs. This is also a great time, believe it or not, to be talking about mulch. Even if you applied mulch in September or when the temperature started to cool, reapplying mulch at this time, particularly as the soil starts to freeze, has many benefits. So anytime you apply mulch, you get all the benefits of insulating the soil against temperature fluctuations, helping to retain moisture, suppressing weeds, creating a nice finished aesthetic in the landscape. Mulch at any time is a great idea, but it may be counterintuitive that mulching in the winter can be the most important time to mulch. The reason for that is that unlike some areas in the country, our main enemy in our plants in the winter months are not extremes in temperatures, but rather the fact that we fluctuate so much during our winter months. By putting down a nice thick layer of mulch as the soil starts to freeze, we help to buffer our plants against those freeze and thaw cycles that can cause such great injury in the winter months. In addition, even in open areas of the landscape where you've applied mulch but it's not directly protecting your plants, you can let Mother Nature work that mulch and improve the soil as the soil freezes and thaws. Dealing with falling leaves and a thick layer of mulch can be confounding, but don't overlook the opportunities to work that mulch and leaves together to create a thicker layer of insulation for your plants. Go ahead and rake the leaves, and for that mulch that comes up with the leaves, you can either chop it up together if you have thick, heavy leaves like, say, cottonwood leaves or some types of maple that don't crumble easily, or nice red maple leaves that pretty much crumble when you rake them, and you can work it all back together and mulch those areas again with the existing material. It's important before the onset of hard freezing temperatures to get a fertilization in on your lawns. We don't recommend fertilizing other plants in the landscape. At this point, even your fall planted crops such as kale or cabbage, cauliflower, peas, any of those things that you might be taking in the vegetable garden and continuing to grow into the early winter months should all be sustained by a slow release organic fertilizer. But our lawns really need to have that late fertilization to capture energy in the root crowns of the plants so they can enter the spring vigorously. A late fertilization on woody plants like trees and shrubs can cause injury, as those plants will be ready to grow the minute we have a few warm days in the early spring or late winter. Don't fertilize too late in the season except on your lawn. Ideally, before hard freezing temperatures have occurred, you've identified plants in your landscape that you want to keep that you know aren't winter hardy for our zone. Those might include plants like that begonia that performs so beautifully in the summer months on your patio, or a bougainvillea, or even a purple fountain grass. Different plants that can do very well during our spring and summer months may not be hardy enough to go through the winter unprotected. If you've identified a prized plant that you want to winter over, make certain that you have applied an insecticide or otherwise addressed any pests that might be present that, although they're not causing a problem outdoors, can quickly proliferate in the indoor environment. So decide to protect those plants, and or just know if they're not coming back, you may as well put them into the compost before they turn into a slushy mess after the first freezing days. If you've brought your plants indoors, watch out for those pests, use a systemic or a topical insecticide as indicated, and make certain that you give those plants plenty of light. A plant that did well in the shade in the summer outdoors needs lots of light as an indoor plant in the winter months. Your winter walkthrough before the snow starts to fall is a great time to identify and address those pest problems that you may not have caught earlier, and or pest problems that you identified earlier in the season and you know you need to treat. It's the perfect time to be applying a dormant spray or a systemic insecticide to prevent future pest problems. Where you've identified pest problems, it's very important to practice good garden hygiene. And by that I mean picking up any leaves that have shown some disease tendencies and not composting them, but getting rid of them out of the landscape altogether. Also, areas where leaves might accumulate or create habitat for future pests or current pests, you want to make sure you get all of that cleaned up and ready to go so that you're not creating pest problems in the future. Now is also the time to be using a pre-emergent. If you've identified weeds that are going to be sprouting in cool months, for instance, cheatgrass is one of our signature weed problems in northern Nevada, and right now, as we start to get our first winter moisture, is the perfect time to get a pre-emergent now to protect against weed problems in the future. Now is the time to be making certain that your water features are ready for the winter as well. Bird baths or patio bubblers, waterfalls, all of those need to be protected against freezing temperatures. Identify the materials that make up your water feature, such as a ceramic or a glass bird bath, and protect those against freezing temperatures accordingly. Most materials can't take the freeze and thaw fluctuations in our winter months and need to be brought in or otherwise protected against having water freeze and thaw inside basins or crevices. Pumps should be pulled and protected, ideally in a frost-free bucket of water, so that the seals, all of the rubber parts and all of the components are protected and lubricated without drying out, but not damaged by freezing and thawing water. And definitely don't forget the birds this time of year. Even if you've been feeding them all through the year, you'll see that their intake of high fat and high protein nutrients goes up as they prepare for those cold nights outdoors. Make certain you offer suet and other high fat, high protein nuts and other nutrients for our birds to get through the winter just fine. This is also the time to make certain that your tools are safely stored. It's a great time to make sure that your shovels and your saws and everything are sharpened and clean. Don't store tools that have a lot of mud or debris on them, or you'll have an unpleasant surprise in the spring when you have rusted tines and rusted blades and a handle that doesn't look too good or work too well. Make certain to clean up your tools before putting them to bed for the winter. And last but not least, plan for next year's gardening season. Address any problems, write down any questions that you might have. This is a great time to actually take your gardening questions to a plant doctor or other person that you can get good advice from. Don't wait until those early months of spring and go, shoot, I wish I'd worried about that back in November or December. Take care of some of your gardening issues or questions right now. And make certain to catalog your successes. Give yourself a pat on the back for things that worked well in the previous season, and then have fun planning for the season ahead. So thanks for sharing some time with us regarding winterizing tips for your landscape. And do be sure to visit all 3 of our retail locations with your gardening questions for the winter months.